watching Metropole Television. My name is Simba Elijah Charles Kiage. This is your economic review. We are joined by George Munga this morning. We're going to tell you exactly what are the biggest headlines that you're waking up to this morning. This big one of those. Now, the price of the US oil has since yesterday recovered back to above zero. Now, this is after the prices plunged into negative territory for the first time in history as the coronavirus pandemic crushed demand in global energy markets. Now, West Texas WTI for delivery next month was fetching just 14 cents a barrel in morning trading in Europe after closing in the previous session at negative $37.63. Now, meaning that producers were paying buyers to take oil off their hands, given limited access to storage in the US. Now, the rapid market decline over recent weeks had reached fever pitch on Monday as traders reached their last day to trade oil for delivery in May before the contracts expire. Now, the deadline triggered a collapse in prices as desperate oil traders with more crude than a storage space were forced to take action. Good. Now, that is where we start from. So, as these prices, therefore, continue to drop globally, Kenyan consumers should expect, therefore, a lower fuel prices as from next month. Now, remember, they are lower also as from this month. Now, Metropole TV, therefore, spoke with engineer Patrick Obarth, an oil expert, on what's driving down oil prices and how that trend will reflect on the local pump prices. Let's take a look at that before we get into that discussion with George Munga this morning.
The price of oil going to zero is as a result of the fact that the offtake is very low at the moment and the production still continues even though it is at reduced levels. One cannot shut down existing oil wells that are producing because it is quite expensive. So the amount of storage space is actually becoming a premium. So those people who trade in oil currently are actually paying people to take.
Fantastic. That's where we are actually going to start from this morning. Question being there for George. Diesel is actually expensive in Kenya right now for the first time in 13 years. So now we do expect that, yes, EPRA is going to sit down again and review these oil prices. But this is what was noted when they were doing the reviews for this month's fuel prices. They told us that the stock that we as Kenya are using for diesel is the one that they got in February. Meaning, we still have to wait for a longer period, therefore, for the price of diesel to come down. Because they're saying, well, we have to run out of that stock for us to go for more inventory, for us now to mark down the prices. Do we expect another change in oil prices again on a downward review from EPRA again?
I expect oil prices to come down,
yes,
by a big margin.
Yes.
Probably starting from the month of late May or early June. Remember the way our oil traders deal. It takes between 30 to 60 days for orders to be made from our source market, that is Saudi Arabia and UAE, to get into our market and eventually now to get to the pump. So as Patrick rightly put it, we are still consuming oils that were imported in the month of March and February.
Yes.
So from the month of May, and I believe from the next sitting that EPRA has, prices will come down maybe by between 10 and 20 shillings for oil, diesel, and kerosene. Already we've seen decline from their previous sitting, from a high of 110 for super petrol to around 92 shillings now. So I see the prices of the pump price going below 80.
Yes.
In the next 1 month or so.
Yes. I want to talk you out to the oily politics that we normally have within the country, where it's actually easier for EPRA to revise it upwards than it is for them to revise it downwards. In fact, for us, we normally have to wait for longer periods, therefore. Do you think that now more than ever, when the government is really trying to look for these monies, when the economy is sort of depressed, do you think that they would be willing to reduce the prices, or that is the best way to get that money? Go right now, get that oil cheaply, come back into the economy, sell it at higher prices. You assure, therefore, that you're making more money for the economy at the time when you need that money as the government.
The way oil is priced in Kenya is that the suppliers are given a margin.
Yes.
The government has its taxes
Yes.
that it levies on the full price
Yes.
that is in Mombasa, and then again there are those levies again that are charged. So you realize that when the landing price in Mombasa is high, then government earns more, and probably the suppliers earns more. So if the landing price in Mombasa is very depressed or very low, then government doesn't earn as much, and probably
Yes.
the suppliers might maintain their margins, or the margins might they might maintain, or the margins might go higher. So I foresee EPRA lowering their prices, but not very, very big margin, because it will affect what the government earns in terms of taxes from oil,
Yes.
which is a big contributor to our taxes. Remember, oil is used in all the sectors of the economy, and therefore it contributes heavily to what KRA collects at the end of the day.
Yes.
So EPRA might reduce the price, but not very, very big margin vis-a-vis the oil prices in our source markets, and even in markets that we talked about, the US and the EU.
Yes, the controversial announcement that we got from EPRA when they were actually reviewing these prices is that for the very first time in people's lifetimes, we're talking about diesel now being way expensive than petrol. Was it the politics that we're saying here, where you're saying that, well, if the majority of the economy is on diesel, then don't make it cheaper than it is petrol? Yes. Would you suspect that that's exactly what they looked at?
I think it's all about taxation and of course the politics,
Yes.
and oil still has cartels. Let me put it
Yes.
that way. So probably there were stocks that they were still holding that they didn't want to sell at lower prices, and then therefore make smaller margins. So they want to offload all that stock before they review the prices of diesel. Remember, super petrol moves faster probably than more than diesel.
Yes.
So you'll find that the diesel stocks are still quite high compared to super petrol. But going into May, I expect diesel prices to also come down the same way kerosene and super petrol has gone down.
Yes. I want to point you out to the reactions that we're seeing from other economies, for instance, US now, where the president announced that they're going to use this time when they have fewer when oil producers are actually paying the governments to come and buy this oil from them, just to make sure that their repositories are quite to the point that they need to be, so they can run their economies at a price that they can dictate by themselves as the government. Do you think that Kenya can do that right now and say, well, if international oil prices are at the lowest they've ever been, then why can't we capitalize on it, go get that oil, and then later when we want to release it, therefore, we can dictate the prices that we want to go in for?
I think even before this pandemic came into being, there was already price wars between the major oil producers, that is Russia, Saudi Arabia and the UAE, and there were already talks of cutting down the levels of production,
which they did.
Yes. Which they did, yes. But didn't have an effect on the aggregate supply in the market. So the pandemic has just made a bad situation worse. And therefore, we are likely to see oil prices muted for the better part of this year. So, for traders in that space, I expect them to take advantage of that. Those who have storage space can take advantage of that. Therefore, stock as much as they can, so that when prices start going high, probably they offload at better margins. Kenya might not be able to take that advantage because, of course, our storage capacity is very limited. Remember, KPC can only hold stocks for maybe 2 months, and 2 months is quite small compared to what I mean to make substantial impact on the overall economy. So I don't see Kenya taking much advantage with this situation. But again, remember, Kenya was getting into an oil-producing country just before this happened. I don't know how far that is going to be. Of course,
muted now.
Of course, tallow oil is a bit mute
Yes,
now.
yes.
But I believe this situation has made it worse for us as a country and for tallow that plays into that space. But I believe after this pandemic, when demands start to rise, probably things will change, but it will take quite a long time. Probably, I foresee maybe 1 year
Yes.
for things to normalize in that space.
Pretty much. All right, I just want us to move into the next issue that we're looking at this morning. Now, mobile phone operator Safaricom Limited is on the list of the companies in the economy that are benefiting from this COVID-19 pandemic. Taking you to the second part of our discussion this morning, we're talking about Safaricom, which is one of the operators that is on the list of the companies that are thriving during the COVID-19 crisis. Now, this is as more subscribers load up data bundles to enable work and online entertainment while staying at home. Now, the firm has reported a 70% surge in data usage and 40% in traffic on its network as more customers work from home, watch movies or socialize. Its closest rival, Telecom Kenya, has already reported a 50% increase in data consumption on its network as customers stay indoors. Following the closure of schools and colleges, students have resorted to studying online, a boom that to mobile phone operators. Now, data usage on mobile and fixed home internet supports and other streaming sites such as YouTube and Netflix have been on the rise. Now, while Safaricom is experiencing an upsurge in data usage, the firm reports that its M-Pesa revenue will suffer due to the firm's waiver on charges for those sending money amounts of less than 1,000 bob. Now, the firm expects a reduction in M-Pesa revenue by 5.5 billion over the next 3 months due to the waivers and tariff adjustments. Now, according to Safaricom CEO Peter Ndegwa, the firm expects to ride on the wave and get back on the saddle once the pandemic eases off. Now, all mobile operators have waived charges on all cash transfers of less than 1,000. Safaricom and other mobile operators expect increased usage of electronic cash transfers as more people dump cash during the crisis. Now, Safaricom remains also cautious in its projections, preferring to see how customers react to the current crisis. The firm has doubled internet speeds for its fiber customers, estimated at close to 300,000 homes, and it's stepping on the gas pedal to install new fiber connections to meet this demand. Now, that's where they find themselves this morning. And it looks as if the only way for mobile telcos is internet. So if Safaricom is saying that they have already covered 300,000 homes in terms of home fiber connections, do you think that for any investor now who's looking at Safaricom and saying, well, their only choice now is home fiber because your M-Pesa revenue is actually reducing by 5.5 B, that it doesn't put you in a better position now to attract investments now at a time when you need them?
I think this pandemic probably came at the right time for Safaricom.
Yes.
And as you know, in the market, every downside has an upside, and probably Safaricom and maybe the companies dealing in healthcare products are the only companies that are enjoying the upside. Coming to Safaricom, the telcos are going to enjoy a bit in this season, yes, because most transactions or most activities have been shifted to online, be it food ordering, be it education, be it entertainment. All of them have been shifted to the web, and therefore Safaricom is likely to enjoy increased revenue from that segment. That not to say, remember our market, the voice market has plateaued, and maybe it might start going down in the near future. M-Pesa is also plateauing, as they have indicated. So I foresee Safaricom going 100% or very heavily on data.
Yes.
Data is still, I'll call it a virgin market or a blue ocean for that purpose, because if you look at the percentages that have been covered vis-a-vis the market in total, there's still over 80-90% that is to be covered. So if Safaricom was to move very fast and cover this market, then be a market leader in that, then they'll record quite a big spike in their revenue in that market segment. So for any strategies Safaricom, I think that is where they should look at, and also for the other telcos in our market.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So far, Safaricom is saying that they're bound to lose 5.5 billion in terms of M-Pesa revenues for the next 3 months. But should they worry when you look at it, George Munga? Because here's the thing. Your wallets have been increased exponentially as well. So regardless of the fact that you're going to say, well, if you look at the less than 1,000 Bob transactions that we're losing, and that's where the majority of the transactions lie, that's where the 5.5 B is going to be coming from. But if you look at the other areas, they've been also extended and really branching. Well, 300,000 Bob maximum in terms of M-Pesa wallet. Doesn't that present for them a way to also make a killing now?
The Safari, I mean, M-Pesa is likely to still generate quite a big chunk of revenues for Safaricom.
Yes.
But remember, M-Pesa is regulated by Central Bank.
Yes.
And I can tell you authoritatively that M-Pesa transactions are quite heavily charged. The charges are quite steep, and I foresee M-Pesa charges coming down in the near future. Even after this pandemic is done, I don't see the charges going up. Otherwise, I foresee them going down. So I think M-Pesa is getting into a stage where it is now plateauing. It's not going to grow with that exponential growth that it did in the last 3 years, because of regulation from central bank, of course regulation from government, and then subscriber base, of course, is now not growing at that pace that it used to grow. But that notwithstanding, there is still a lot of opportunities in that market. Remember, M-Pesa payments is still something that Safaricom is still pushing, and I think they've quite gained some market share in that. So I think it just needs a bit of revamping for it to again to start experiencing that growth that growth that it used to have.
Yes.
But all that said, I think data is now the new blue ocean for the telcos that we have in the market.
I want to talk to you about the announcement that the president made the other day when he said that Kenya's got into a partnership therefore with Google for the balloons now for 4G network coverage, and they did use Telkom just to get into that partnership. I'm going to ask you now, because if you look at the way the deal therefore is structured, anybody would have asked you, therefore, that when it comes to 4G coverage in the country, it would have cost us less amount of money to maybe partner with Safaricom because of their coverage. You would have expected that these services would have gone to little areas. But they opted to go for Telkom. What does it show you, therefore? Are we moving away from seeing Safaricom as the only solution when it comes to our mobile channeled solutions in the economy, that we are also now sort of trying to remove away the monopoly that Safaricom has already taken care of hold of the market?
I think that decision was more of, I would want to say it more of political than economic.
Yes.
Remember, Safaricom has bagged quite a number of government contracts previously.
Yes.
Remember when we were doing the CCTV coverage that government was doing, they're the ones who were given that contract. In our previous election, I think they were given quite a heavy contract that they did. So I think maybe politically to seem the government to seem biased towards Safaricom as opposed to the other players. So probably my thinking is that is the reason why government decided to go with Telkom for this particular project. But overall, Safaricom has bigger muscles to pull up some of these projects.
Yes.
If you look at it business was economic wise.
Yes.
But I think for political reasons, of course, the government must seem to be equitable to all the players in the market.
Yes. But we're saying that you're saying that, well, you foresee a place where, I mean, the revenue that Safaricom is going to be getting from M-Pesa transactions is not going to grow exponentially.
Exactly.
Do you say, therefore, that data battles are going to be the next frontier when it comes to which telco is going to run the Kenyan market?
Exactly.
Is that a place where Telkom and Airtel now have a chance to attack Safaricom?
They have a chance, but already Safaricom is way ahead of them.
Yes.
Remember, Safaricom has rolled the home fiber quite fast.
Yes.
I think they came behind Zuku. They came behind is it called Safari? Is it? I don't know the other name.
Yes.
But they came. I think they were the third entrant into that space. But really, they've overtaken the other players in that space, and they're the market leaders in that space already. So I would have expected the other telecom companies to take advantage of this space and revamp. I mean, and just push it to get as much market shares as they can. But probably, I think financial muscle, Safaricom was able to jump ahead of them, and currently Safaricom is a market leader in that space. And I can tell you that that's a blue ocean that is going to grow the way M-Pesa grew in the last 6 years. Maybe in the next 3-4 years, it's going to be the biggest contributor into the revenues of the most telecom companies in our country.
Yes. Now, finally, therefore, George, now we do have the banking sector that is also complaining about the reduced revenues that they're getting from transactions, therefore, which is the biggest part of the transactions, moving around your money from your bank account to your mobile wallet. Safaricom is also complaining, well, our revenues are going to drop by 5.5B. For anybody looking at the most attractive quarters now, will you go into the banking sector, or will you rather go into Safaricom?
For transaction business, I think Safaricom literally ate the lunch for most of our banking corporations.
Yes.
Because for a very long time, transaction income was enjoyed by the players in the banking sector. But when Safaricom came in, I think they took over 50% of transaction incomes from the banking from players in the banking industry. And currently they're even taking up interest income as a small percentage, albeit from the banking industry.
Yes.
Of course, with their M-Shwari and the mobile loans. So I foresee Safaricom or players in the telecom, because you don't know what the other players are strategizing about, to still be ahead of players in the banking industry when it comes to transaction income, because most transactions in our economy are going digital.
Yes.
And that is where the market is headed. So any player who plays in that space and is able to market themselves as the biggest player in that space will definitely enjoy the revenues in that market.
Pretty much. All right, let's therefore close this conversation, therefore, to the Kenya Revenue Authority, which is reported to have stopped lorries which had arrived at the factory on Friday last week, all right, from being loaded with a consignment of ethanol, which was part of a consignment ordered for use in manufacturing of affordable alcohol-based hand sanitizers for contribution or distribution to vulnerable communities. KRA issued a notice to bankers in September last year restricting transactions on accounts of cash-strapped Miller, we're talking about Munga Sugar Company, in a bid to recover a 10 million in unpaid taxes. Now, the factory management is now calling on the county government to intervene, as 300 workers are at risk of losing their jobs, as sugar milling will only return in July. Now, while this goes on, the Sugar Task Force report had finalized and presented a report at the President's office with proposals including writing off the tax for these companies. Question being, therefore, is it time to implement the report to allow the ethanol sale? And what sort of intervention can the county and national government implement in the short-term basis? It's interesting. I mean, George, a lot of non-performing government entities within the economy. Now, unions had said that the only chance they have right now is to sell some of the ethanol that they have, so they could sort of be in business up until July, when, well, some machines are expecting to be brought into the country, can return the company into sugar milling. But KRA says no. Well, you still have 10 million shillings in unpaid taxes. There's a report that is tabled at the president's office that is saying you have 3 ways. Number 1, privatize. Number 2, which I recommend, is write off all the debts for these sugar companies that you have right now and sort of start growing them slowly again. Well, that's it. They cannot do business. Because as per law, they can do business. KRA doesn't want anything to go on. For you, if you were put in that position today, well, you have ethanol that the government has said, well, sell it cheaply so we can get into production of sanitizers, which are in high demand right now in the country. What would be the solution that the county government and the national government could offer right now in the short term? But it has to be within law. Yes.
Mumias Sugar has been struggling for some time now, and I see what the government is doing is prescribing a painkiller for a tumor, so to speak.
Yes.
Mumias Sugar has a big tumor that needs a lot of restructuring, needs a lot of thought process to be able to bring it back to life again. As it is now, it is what we call a company that is limping. Of course, it is already in receivership, and when a company is in receivership, what it means is the company is basically insolvent. It cannot meet its obligation as they materialize.
Yes.
So. For KRA to go in and demand, in fact, KRA was demanding 10 billion, and they scaled it down for the company to give them a bond of 100 million before they can resume operations. I am sure I can bet on this that Mumias Sugar cannot raise 100 million as it is today, because they cannot even meet the bankers' obligations. They cannot meet the obligations, so to speak.
Yes.
So I believe KRA would be the last person they would want to pay in the order of
Yes.
priorities.
Yes,
But again,
KCB wants is coming for them as well. Yes.
Exactly. But again, remember, the government has a very huge stake in Mumias Sugar.
Yes.
And KRA is an agent of the government. So I think it will be dependent upon the government to intervene on this and say, if this is the position, then let us allow this company to do A, B, C, D, so that they can be able even to just sustain their employees. Because as it is, I think
yes.
the bottom line currently would just be to sustain their employees as they look for a solution. Otherwise, these are just what we call temporary solutions to a bigger problem. But in the long run, I can bet that the only solution that Mumias has would be to go for privatization, and that alone will not help Mumias Sugar. Government must come in and restructure the entire sugar sector.
Yes.
If you look at the operations or the operating model of some of this company, they need quite a big, what we call a very big nucleus to be able to feed into their raw material, so they can produce up to capacity. But if you look at our sugar belt alone, we have several companies competing for the same raw material, and therefore they cannot produce up to their capacity. Meaning, whenever the companies are running, they're losing money. So privatization is one aspect, but the sugar sector must be restructured wholesome, so that these companies can make economic sense to investors in those companies.
Yes. Do you find that even the government, whatever decision they're going to make, is going to be just stopped by the fact that KCB, on the other hand, is saying, whatever you make right now, that's ours, because we also putting you under receivership right now. So you can't make any sale without us getting any bit of that. Yes.
Exactly.
Does it complicate the situation right now for Mumias?
KCB is the receiver manager in this scenario, and therefore,
yes.
Any operations or anything they do, they'll do in their best interest. So I believe even if Mumias was to be allowed to sell the ethanol that they have, a big percentage of that revenue will be taken up by KCB. Maybe they'll just pay the operating costs and maybe the employees. Otherwise, the rest will be taken up by KCB.
Yes.
And therefore, the taxman, that I don't see the taxman getting his money in this scenario. But
yes.
if they get it, a very small percentage of the revenues
yes.
that this company makes.
Yes. Is that the irony that now we find ourselves in when we are at a catch 50-50 situation, where on the other side, the government is pressurizing KRA to meet at least 20% of our gross domestic product. And over this other side as well, the government is also wants to write off taxes, which KRA is going for as well from these companies.
KRA is between a rock and a hard place. I was just reading, I was just going through their figures. Last month alone, KRA missed the pay. Pay is one of the biggest revenue sources for KRA. They collected under 50% of what they normally collect month by month. So KRA is under a lot of pressure to collect. But KRA only collects, you see, KRA does not operate in a vacuum. It operates within an ecosystem. Our ecosystem currently is very shaky. If I want to put it that way, so it will require a wholesome approach by government to be able to enable KRA to collect whatever they want to collect. Otherwise, if you send KRA into the market alone, then they'll be just spending money but not bringing money back into the economy. Into treasury, because the ecosystem cannot allow it to collect as much as it wants to collect. Remember, companies have either laid off their employees or they have had to implement salary cuts. And when that happens, it impacts directly on the amount of pay as you earn that KRA collects from corporates. So KRA will be hard pressed for the next part of this year to be able to meet its month-on-month budgets.
Yes. Lastly, therefore, George, and I know it's 2020, we're going to 2021, we're still within the COVID-19 pandemic. The government is really trying to figure on exactly how it's going to run the economy. Is it proper, therefore? Because you have non-performing agencies like Mumias now. You don't have to go far, find KQ, which is grounded now as we speak, with the government trying to look for solutions on exactly how they can get this money, therefore to go buy out the shareholders of KQ. Is it important for the government to be in business now, or that is well an outdated model that the government should be running away from?
I think that is something that government should run away from current or in the future.
Yes.
As I've always mentioned in this show, government is not the best businessman in this space. They have done very poorly in managing the companies where they have significant shareholding.
Yes.
So I don't think the government should even be thinking of getting into private sector or into some of these companies and invest heavily. But that notwithstanding, government should facilitate the place or private companies to be able to operate efficiently in this market, and therefore they can be able to collect as much taxes as they can. Going into 2020-2021, I think what government should now focus on, because revenues will be depressed.
Yes.
First of all, they should focus on restructuring our foreign debt, so that either they pay interest only, or they don't pay at all for maybe a period of 2-3 years. That is, they should go out there and ask for moratoriums from our foreign debt holders. And then two is just manage the expenditures currently in the economy. That is the only way that government will be able to survive this year.
Yes.
and this year before the economy starts looking up again.
Pretty much, which is the stress for the government. George, always a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you.
All right, that's exactly what we have prepared for you this morning. But guess what? Tag George to when he came into the studio this morning on YouTube at Metropole TVKE, on Twitter as well as Facebook. Good, that's exactly how we come to the end of Metropole's Economic Review.